I feel like we're evading the hard case here, and it was the point where Douglas started, where he claimed that we are simply not up to the super stimulus of the especially salient ethical conundrum of finding the corpse of a specific infant on a beach, or hearing too much of the pain of a specific family from some war-torn area, let's say Syria. I mean, the refugee. I mean, there's immigration, there's economic immigration, there's refugees, and those are somewhat distinct. But if you make the economic disparities sufficiently wide, they kind of run together. And I think it's hard to totally defend, in pragmatic terms, it's hard to defend those who are calling for open borders. But in ethical terms, I see their point, because we're living more and more in one world. And we want to live more and more in one world. We should want to live more and more in one world. We have problems, long-term problems, that can only be solved by thinking as a single species on a single planet, right? Nation states are not the end game for us as a species. And whether we ever get to something like a world government, we have to recognize the ultimate untenability of living within our borders as though we could solve every human problem by just being selfish up to the political boundary between, where one line was drawn on a map. And we know, I think all of us know, when we take the time to think about it, that we can't justify the ethical disparities in this world with respect to the variable of luck. I mean, some people are incredibly lucky to be born where they're born, when they're born, and some people are incredibly unlucky. And we're all very, very lucky not to have been born yesterday in Syria or 10 years ago in Syria. And when you focus on the specific case of a family in Syria trying to get out, there seems to be no ethical justification for not letting them in to this lucky circumstance. Now, when you pair that untenability with this other fact that the problem is not the problem we're talking about with respect to jihadism and a clash of civilizations and the differences between cultures, the problem is not the color of people's skin or the language they speak or where they came from or the food they like or the music they produce. The problem are the ideas in their heads that they're willing to organize their lives around and in many cases die for, or even let their children die for, right? And some ideas are so bad that we have to do almost anything we can to keep them out of our society. But the ideas obviously cross borders. They cross borders on social media. They cross borders with YouTube videos. And so it is, on some level, I mean, the real issue is that we have to win a war of ideas.
Often in the heads of the very same people you're feeling sorry for, which is an important point. Because it adds a layer of complexity, doesn't it?
But you take these specific cases. So, for instance, like if you said, I mean, this is something that happened to me in various contexts. I'm sure it happened at least once on my podcast, where I said, well, if you find a family of refugees, if we knew we could only let in 200,000 refugees, say, in any given year into the U.S., to learn that this set of 100,000 refugees were all Christians coming from these war-torn areas in the Middle East or in sub-Saharan Africa, well, that would be relevant information. Insofar as we could actually know that they're Christians, that would be good news, because what we're worried about now at this moment in history are the jihadists we might be inadvertently importing. Now, to say that, as many Christocentric bigots would also say, is on the left tantamount to an expression of Islamophobia and, bizarrely, racism. But it is not an irrational preference. If you want 100% of jihadists are Muslim, right? To not admit that is to be just tongue-tied by your own masochism and white guilt, and to have been browbeaten by people arguing in bad faith.